So at Black Squirrel, one of the things that we do is we consider what type of sources of capital that you need to look for. We all have bank accounts. And the first thing that we normally think about is that we would need to go to our bank, whichever bank it is. And you say, I've been banking here for 20 years. I need $50,000. Let me go and see if I can get a $50,000 loan. Two things are going to happen. First thing they're going to do is they're going to ask you for financials. So if you don't have your financials available, so that's going to take up time, because that means now you have to go back to your accountant or your tax, or whoever does your taxes, and they need to be able to establish and build financials for your business that you can submit to that bank. The same thing is going to happen if you're working with a CDFI. Now, one of the things I want to point out, and the reason we work with these three particular funding sources is because at the bank, you're probably going to get pretty competitive rates. But also at the bank is there to make money. So they're going to want as much reduction in risk as they can possibly get. And part of how they reduce that risk is making sure that you have all of the necessary financials, cash flow, and that you have assets that can be collateralized in the event that you're not able to maintain the loan. But what they also want to do is they're looking at interest rates. And so as you go through that process and they're looking at interest rates, a lot of the banks, especially the really large banks, believe it or not, some of them aren't even going to accept a commercial loan for anything less than $100,000. And so what you're going to do is they're going to ask you to put up your personal credit and your personal assets in order to give you that loan. And this is where we have to think about how we've structured our businesses. Because you should be able to, if you've established your business and you're regularly paying your bills and you've built up your cash flow, that bank should be willing to take your business. But if it's just a small amount that's needed, if it's under $100,000, you're probably better off going to a community development financial institution, a CDFI. And for those of you, and I may be telling a lot of people in this group things that you already know, but I also want to make sure, oh, I'm sorry. I got it. Um, I also want to make sure that when we're talking about community development institutions, that you understand that banks are required to invest in community development financial institutions, the CDFIs, in order to get into the small business communities. Because the banks are already saying, and look, if you're not doing $100,000, you're not doing $150,000 in terms of what you're asking, we're not interested, because they want to make the interest off of the large numbers. But what they do is then they're required by the Community Reinvestment Act, which is called the CRA, to invest and put money into community development financial institutions who can be as competitive. And with 90% of the CDFIs across the country, what they're going to do is they're not going to be so leaning so much on your credit. They're going to lean more on your history, on your character, because they want to give you this money. The other thing about the CDFIs is they tend to have resources to support you and help you to build the cash flow, to build those financials in the event that you don't have them when you need them. So this is where we're getting back to time, because all of this takes time for you as a business owner to understand the things that you in the documentation you need to have in place when you need that money. The other one, obviously, is the Small Business Administration. Now, the small business, the SBA, they're going to change from time to time, but for the most part, they are there to be that government extension to give you money when nobody else will. But you still need to have certain characteristics about your business that is going to evolve around your financials and your cash flow, but also in terms of how long you've been in business. For the most part, the SBA, if you're under 3 years in business, they're probably not going to be the right source for you.
Hey, Kevin,
Yes.
can you take us just a quick second and look at the participant list and try to add and allow in some other folks? If you look at the
Oh,
participants, you'll see
yes.
folks waiting in the, yeah, if you can just let them just do it, admit all, that should let
Yes.
them all in. All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you
Sorry
so much,
about
sir.
that. No
No problem.
problem. Get that out. I think I got everybody. My apologies. So that's to give you a little bit of background on why we built and what I see as the significant issues that we want to be able to address with Biz Scoreline. Just real quick, some small business facts. Believe it or not, small business is the backbone of this country. And all of 99.9% of all the businesses in the United States are actually small businesses. Now, what does that mean, really? Well, what that means is we are the ones that generate a lot of the overall revenue for the tax base for this country. But there's some really strong numbers in terms of that percentage of businesses in the United States being small businesses. We also have to think about how many of them are actually making over $1 million. And according to this statistic, 9% of small businesses make over $1 million. One of the things we have to look at is the economy of scale. And we have to think about with that economy of scale, how are we actually looking at that in terms of our sustainability as a business? The next statistic is 82% of small businesses fail because of cash flow issues. You know, there's a lot of us, and I'll be one of the main ones to tell you, I hate financing, but it's a necessary evil in what we have to deal with in our business. So I sit down with my accountant every single week, every Wednesday, 10 o'clock in the morning. Nothing else is going to take precedence. I need to review my cash flow. I need to look at my financials. I need to understand how my sales are going. I need to see if I can cut costs. I do that without fail every single week. We have to pay attention to our cash flow because that will be the thing that will kill you when you need funds. The other thing is that 23% of small businesses fail because they don't have the right team. Now, that may seem like a small thing, and sometimes we have this thing that we do where we say, you know what, the workforce just isn't as good as what it used to be. But I'm going to tell you, a lot of what I see in terms of how we look at the workforce and having the right team is making sure that we're paying attention to what needs to be done with your business day to day and making sure that you're matching people with the right responsibilities. So we talked about these things in terms of cash flow as an issue, the lack of talent. The other thing is lack of business model. We tend to start our businesses and we want to have our businesses thrive. And once we actually see a trajectory where we're able to pay our bills and we can be sustainable, we may not necessarily think about the strategic things in terms of how we're going to project and keep our business sustainable for the next 3 to 5 years. We want to make sure that we're paying attention to that. A lot of times when, especially in hard times, a lot of businesses will cut back on their marketing because that seems like a good way of saving money. But what it also does is it cuts you off at the knees in terms of being able to generate additional revenue, new revenue. And we always have to think about how we have to support the customers. One of the things in any business is keeping your customer base where they continue to come back to you, which means you have to have a strategy on how you support your customers and how you keep them informed. In a nutshell, there are three things that we want to be able to look at, and these are what we consider to be the most important things in terms of our ecosystem infrastructure. Number one is capital at the top of the list. Thinking about how you're going to get financing when you need it, look at how you sustain your business with the financial structure of your business, and how you're going to scale. We're going back to what Oscar asked earlier. Who's going to need capital? Everybody needs capital. Now, if your sales are generating that quickly that you can afford to take it money out of your profit in order to reinvest in your business, that's great. I think very few businesses have that capability. But every business needs to think about their relationship with a financial institution where they know, and once again, I'm going to say at least once a quarter, if not twice a year, you need to be able to talk to your financial partner and ask them to tell you what does your financial situation look like? What are you able to get from them in the event that you need money? Or sit down with them and say, hey, look, I'm going to need $100,000 6 months, 9 months, 12 months from now in order to invest in my business, to scale my business, or to redo whatever uh, uh, storefront or uh, however if you have a building that's a part of your business. So these are all things that you want to make sure that you're paying attention to. Other thing is your customers. I talked about it earlier in terms of how you market. You have to be sure that people that buy from you know that you're still in business, but you also want to make sure that you're getting new business. And because you're not going to keep every single customer. They're not going to keep coming back unless you give them a reason to. And one of the other things is services. When we talk about services, and this is where MBDA and the different sites around the country are going to play a big role here, because these are services that are available to every business out there to help you to develop and do the very things that I'm talking about. So I'm going to cut to the chase here, and I want to be able to show you a little bit more about what we do in terms of Biz Scoreline. Essentially, what we're doing is we're going to look at and take a 360-degree assessment of your business. What we're going to do is we're going to ask you to go in, commit to about 30 to 45 minutes to answer all the questions that we're going to ask about your business. And we're going to ask you about your business in these 6 areas. We want to know things about your operations and performance, how you manage your sales and customers, how do you manage your finance, HR and personnel, your marketing, and your technology. Now, there's some overlap in different areas, especially when we talk about HR and personnel and technology, because when we talk about technology, it's not a standalone piece. Technology is going to be a part of how you do your sales, how you do your finance, and even how you do your operations and how you perform, or even your HR and personnel. So as we look at these different aspects of your business, we want to be able to give you a snapshot of and a baseline of what your business looks like today. And this is what it would look like. So what we do is we actually will give you an efficiency rating in these 6 areas of your business. Now, in this particular report, this business has a score of an 80. The top score that you can get with our Biz Score line is an 89. But what we're able to do is wherever there are any deficiencies in your business, we can now look at these deficiencies in your business and make sure that we can then make reference to resources to help shore those aspects of your business up. A couple of things that we want to point out.
Yeah, but I think you might be frozen there.
We want to give you a sense of where you stand in your industry. And so generators for IT company and within the industry. And so for this allows that particular company to look and say, okay, I do these well. I don't do these services well. And then we can start focusing on the areas that can help bring additional revenue to these types of companies. The other thing is understanding who your market is. Who are you really targeting? And understanding if it says that you're supposed to be targeting manufacturing and retail companies, which in this case makes up 22% of this particular market segmentation, but you're not focusing on that, that essentially means that you're disregarding 22% potential revenue increase in your company. So these are the two most basic things that we look at when we talk about it. But overall, what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to assess your business and give you an idea of what your business can do and where you are right now, what your baseline is. Then what we want to do is be able to sit down and tell you what type of strategic opportunities are available for you to shore your business up. And once we've had the opportunity for you to help you to create that strategic plan, then we want to take action and actually make sure that we're taking the steps to reconcile the things that we find. Now, this is a very basic understanding of how we operate. But what we really want to be able to do is we want to be able to get every single business person, because one of the things I want to be able to point out is that when we go through a business assessment, or when the business decides that they need an assessment, it's usually because something's wrong. What I want and need every business to do is to be able to look at your business when you don't have to put out brush fires, when things are going well, because that's the best time for you to be able to look at it with fresh eyes, and to also be able to think about how you can allocate your time and resources to fix whatever things need to be shored up in your business. So before I go to the next part here, I want to take a moment and find out if anybody have any questions about what I've said so far.
think there was a couple inside of the chat here, Kevin.
Okay.
Let me go to some of those. You should be able to kind of scroll up. Let's see. I think one from Keisha was, can a P&L be used if there is no cash flow?
Um, yes. There's two things that I want to point out in terms that when we talk about your financials, we want to look at your profit and loss, but we also want to look at your balance sheet. Now, those two pieces alone will give any financial, but when they start thinking about how much you're asking for, cash flow to say, once you've paid all of your bills, how much money do you have left over? Right. And once we figure that out, this is where we talk about the cash flow. So they will make assumptions about your cash flow. But what you can do is actually structure your cash flow and put a spreadsheet and report in with your financials that can show that after you've paid all of your bills, you have $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 left over, and you're willing to allocate a certain percentage of that money towards paying back this loan. And then that'll help you to understand how long that loan needs to be extended, how much you can actually qualify for. Now, one of the things that we do with different contracts is we will sometimes sit down and we'll take the opportunity to give a business a couple of months to restructure where some of their expenses are. Think about where you can cut some of your costs, and think about how you're going to strategically start ramping up your revenue. Sometimes you have cyclical revenue, and you can start anticipating how you can actually ramp up more revenue in a particular period, depending on what your business is. So yes, it can be used, but the actual cash flow statement will actually give you a better chance of being able to justify why they should give you that money. Let's see. Does the CDFI include rural areas to build entrepreneur hubs? Dawn, that's a great question. And yes, they do. One of the areas that we work with in terms of with CDFIs is in North Carolina. I think of the different areas that we work in, I think North Carolina has one of the best CDFI networks, where they literally have 14 CDFIs across 3 states, where it's North Carolina, South Carolina, and I want to say Tennessee, where those CDFIs actually collaborate and they reach out. They have the entrepreneur hubs, and they reach out to the small businesses throughout the rural areas to make sure that they're being serviced. So that's a very good question. Uh, Jose says the interesting thing about all of this, you already need to be succeeding before they give you money. I'm interested in knowing who really participates in seeding businesses financially. Another good question. Um, I tell you what, let me, if you can give me 1 second, what I want to do is I want to pull up our site real quick. And the reason I want to do this, because one of the things that we do when you get your report is you'll be able to see certain recommendations and things that we bring up.